Rain hammered the windshield, drowning the road in a watery blur. The wipers worked furiously, but barely cleared a view. Each flash of lightning lit up the empty highway for a second, then left only darkness and the thrum of the storm. Mark tightened his grip on the wheel. The GPS on the dash froze, flickered, then went black. He swore under his breath, but the silence inside the car made it sound louder than he meant. "I thought I saw a sign back there," Jenna murmured, leaning forward, squinting into the storm. "But it was too dark." Mark didn't answer. The tires hissed on wet asphalt. Thunder rolled somewhere deep, and the road seemed endless, like they were driving in circles. Then, ahead, a glow appeared. Not lightning, something steadier. Mark slowed down, and through the rain, a diner sign took shape. Its neon buzzed faintly, half the letters dead, but enough to read diner. Jenna frowned. Here? In the middle of nowhere? "It's better than nothing," Mark muttered, guiding the car into the lot. The place looked forgotten, windows streaked with grime, roof sagging, parking lot empty. But inside, lights glowed. Someone had to be there. He cut the engine. The storm outside pressed louder against the car, a wall of noise. Neither moved. Finally, Jenna unclipped her seatbelt with a shaky breath. 2 minutes. Asked for directions, then we're gone. Mark nodded. Together, they dashed through the rain. The neon buzz sputtered above them as he pulled the heavy glass door open. The sound of the storm cut away instantly. What replaced it wasn't silence, just a stillness too deep, as though the diner had been holding its breath, waiting. The door creaked shut behind them, sealing out the storm. A faint hum of fluorescent lights filled the air, but otherwise the diner was silent. Mark glanced around. Every booth sat empty. Menus were scattered across tables, some curled at the edges from age. A half-finished cup of coffee rested on the counter, its surface a thin, oily film. A plate with crumbs sat beside it, fork still in place, as if someone had been eating just minutes earlier. Yet there was no one. Jenna's shoes squeaked against the checkered linoleum floor as she stepped inside. "Hello?" Her voice echoed, thin and uncertain. No reply. The lights flickered once, buzzing like a dying insect. Mark felt the hair rise on the back of his neck. The whole place smelled faintly of burnt coffee and grease that had seeped into the walls over decades. "Maybe they're in the back," he muttered, though he didn't believe it. From the kitchen, something shifted. Not a voice, more like metal scraping lightly against metal. He froze, waiting. It didn't come again. Jenna touched his arm. "Mark, I don't like this." Neither did he. But the thought of stepping back into that storm without a clue where they were heading seemed worse. For now. They moved toward the counter, their reflections ghost-like in the smudged chrome surfaces. A jukebox in the corner glowed faintly, its red light humming, though no music played. Mark tried again. "Hello? Anybody here?" Still nothing, just the steady hum of lights overhead, buzzing like nervous static in his skull. Then, creak! Both turned toward the kitchen doors. They swayed slightly, as though touched by an unseen hand, the swinging metal half open. Beyond was only shadow, deep and still. Jenna's grip tightened on Mark's arm. He swallowed hard, forcing a steady breath. Let's just ask and get out. Together they stepped closer, unaware of what was waiting just beyond that door. The kitchen doors creaked wider, and a figure emerged. She wore a waitress uniform straight out of another decade. Pale pink fabric, collar starched, a name tag pinned crookedly to her chest. Her hair was perfectly arranged in stiff curls, though the style looked 50 years old. "Evening," she said, her voice flat, almost rehearsed. A smile spread across her face, but it didn't touch her eyes. Those eyes were wide, unblinking, glassy as if painted on. Jenna froze. Mark cleared his throat. Hey, sorry to bother you. We're a little lost. Storm knocked out our GPS, and we just..." "Sit," the woman interrupted. Her voice was polite, but final, a command wrapped in hospitality. She gestured toward a booth, her hand trembling slightly. Mark and Jenna exchanged a glance. Something about her didn't feel right. Still, refusing seemed worse. They slid into the nearest booth, vinyl seats squeaking under them. The waitress drifted to the counter. Her movements were oddly stiff, like each step had to be thought through before taken. From behind the counter, she called, "Coffee?" "We're fine, thank you," Jenna said quickly. But the woman didn't wait for an answer. She fetched 2 chipped mugs, filled them from a pot sitting on a hot plate, and carried them over. The steam smelled burnt, bitter, laced with something sour underneath. She placed the cups in front of them with a clink, her smile frozen. "On the house," she said. Mark forced a nod. "Thanks. Could we maybe use your phone, just to call for directions?" The waitress tilted her head slowly, like a doll whose string had been pulled. For a moment, she only stared, eyes wide and unblinking. Then she said, "After you've had something to drink." Her lips curved into that same fixed smile. Her hands trembled again, and Jenna noticed the dark stains under her fingernails, black, crusted, impossible to place. The hum of the jukebox grew louder, though no song played. Mark felt the knot in his stomach tighten. Something here was wrong, very, very wrong. The 2 mugs sat steaming between them, their bitter scent thick in the air. Jenna kept her hands folded tightly in her lap, refusing to touch hers. Mark wrapped his fingers around his cup, though he didn't lift it. The ceramic was hot, almost uncomfortably so, like it had been sitting on the burner for hours. Across the diner, the clock ticked unevenly. Instead of a steady rhythm, it stuttered, skipping seconds, then dragging others out too long. The sound grated against Mark's nerves, each irregular tick, talk, pressing into the silence. Jenna's gaze flicked to the waitress, who stood too close, just a few feet away, watching, not moving, not blinking. Her smile never faltered, but her fingers twitched against the hem of her apron. The dark crust beneath her nails looked thicker now, almost like dried blood. Mark forced himself to speak, his voice careful. "So, been here long?" The waitress tilted her head again, like she didn't quite understand the question. "This place never closes," she said softly. "Not ever." The words hung in the air, colder than the storm outside. Jenna shifted uncomfortably, pushing her cup away. "Actually, we should get going," she said quickly. "We've already taken up too much of your time." The waitress didn't answer. Her glassy eyes stayed locked on Jenna. The jukebox in the corner buzzed louder, as if straining against silence. A single note crackled through the speaker, distorted, warbling, and then cut off, leaving the diner in that suffocating hum again.
Mark's skin prickled. He glanced at the counter, at the kitchen doors swaying faintly on their hinges as though the storm outside was somehow leaking in. A low groan of wood echoed from somewhere deeper inside the diner. Then Jenna noticed it. The waitress's hands shaking harder now, her knuckles scraped raw, and yet she still smiled. A sudden creak broke the tension. The sound came from the back door beyond the kitchen, a heavy hinge shifting against the frame. Then, faintly, whispers drifted through the gap. Not words they could understand, but low murmurs, too many voices for just one person. Mark pushed himself out of the booth. "I'll check," he said, though his voice was tight. "Don't," Jenna began, but he was already moving. He crossed the diner quickly, trying not to look at the waitress as he passed. Her head turned to follow him, eyes wide, that stiff smile never faltering. The hallway beyond the counter smelled of mildew. He pushed open the bathroom door, needing an excuse to be away, to breathe. The light flickered weakly overhead, casting sickly shadows on the tiled walls. Then he saw it. Scratches covered the plaster, gouged deep. Words carved over and over by desperate hands. "Don't stay after midnight. Don't drink. She's not alive." The letters twisted across the walls, overlapping, frantic. His pulse spiked, chest tightening. The whispers outside the door seemed louder now, almost right behind him. He stumbled back into the diner, breath quick, trying to keep his face calm.
Jenna was still in the booth, but she wasn't alone. The waitress stood directly over her, leaning close, those unblinking eyes locked on Jenna's face. She hadn't moved when Mark returned. She was simply waiting. "Bathroom's out of order," Mark said quickly, forcing a shaky laugh. Neither woman reacted. The clock on the wall let out another uneven tick, dragging the second out like a held breath. Then, very slowly, the waitress turned her head toward him. Her smile widened, too wide, stretching skin in a way that looked painful. Mark's throat went dry. Every instinct screamed the same thing. They had to leave, now. The lights flickered once, twice, then died. For a moment, the diner was swallowed in darkness, broken only by the weak neon glow bleeding through the rain-streaked windows. The hum of the jukebox sputtered into silence. Then came the sound, whispers, louder now, layered voices circling from every corner of the diner, circling them. "Mark," Jenna whispered, her voice shaking. Shadows crawled along the walls, shapes that didn't belong to either of them or the waitress. Long, jagged silhouettes stretched and shifted, bending unnaturally with each flicker of lightning outside. Mark grabbed Jenna's hand and pulled her up from the booth. "We're leaving."
They moved toward the door, but the waitress stepped into their path. Her body jerked unnaturally, like a puppet on strings. Her smile was frozen wide, her glassy eyes reflecting the neon light. When she spoke, her voice carried a strange echo, as if others spoke with her. "You can't go." Mark's grip tightened on Jenna's hand. "Move," he snapped, his voice cracking under the weight of panic. The waitress twitched, one arm reaching out, fingers curled like claws. Her nails, black, cracked, glistening, scratched faint lines against the wall as she dragged them forward. The whispers swelled, pressing in from every direction. Adrenaline surged. Mark shoved past her, shoulders slamming into her chest. She staggered back but didn't fall. Her smile never broke, even as her head snapped at an unnatural angle with the impact. Jenna yanked the front door open. A blast of storm air and rain crashed into the diner for an instant. Together, they bolted outside, shoes slipping on wet concrete. Behind them, the whispers rose into a single distorted wail that rattled the glass windows. Mark didn't look back. Not yet. The rain hit them like needles as they sprinted across the lot. Mark fumbled with the keys, his hands slick, heart hammering in his chest. Jenna yanked open the passenger door and dove inside. A flash of lightning lit up the lot, and for a split second, he swore he saw movement. Shadows sliding across the diner's walls from the inside. The engine sputtered, then roared to life. Tires spun against wet gravel before finally catching, launching the car forward. Mark gripped the wheel, eyes fixed on the empty stretch of highway ahead. Neither spoke. The storm swallowed them whole again, rain lashing against the glass, wipers screeching. But it was better than the suffocating silence of that place. Jenna finally broke it. "Did you see?" "Don't," Mark snapped, his voice low. "Don't talk about it." She nodded, pressing a trembling hand to her mouth. Miles passed, though neither could tell how many. The highway stretched endlessly forward. Slowly, Jenna turned to glance back through the rear window, her breath caught. The diner was gone. Where the neon glow had been, there was only darkness. No building, no parking lot, nothing but rain and trees. Mark glanced in the rear view mirror. At first, he saw only streaks of water distorting the glass. But then, clear as day, a figure appeared in the window that shouldn't have been there. Tall, stiff, with glassy eyes glowing faintly in the dark. The waitress, watching them. The mirror shook as Mark's hand tightened on the wheel. He blinked, and she was gone.
but he knew what he had seen. And as the storm dragged them further down that endless highway, a chilling thought anchored in both their minds. They hadn't escaped. Not really.
The desert stretched out in every direction. Endless black sand and scrub under a sky scattered with stars. The headlights carved a thin path through the emptiness, the only thing separating the three friends from the vast, swallowing dark. Eli drove, his hands tight on the wheel, eyes fixed ahead. In the back seat, Rachel dozed with her head against the glass, while Tom scrolled lazily through his phone, the glow lighting his tired face. The heat had been brutal all day, but now the desert was cold, the kind of cold that seeped into bone. Still, the car's temperature gauge kept creeping higher. Eli tapped the glass nervously. The needle was edging toward red. "Great," he muttered. "What is it?" Tom asked, not looking up. "Car's overheating." By the time he pulled onto the sandy shoulder, steam was curling from under the hood. They all climbed out, the desert night silent except for the faint tick of cooling metal. The stars above were beautiful, countless, sharp, infinite, but they did little to calm the unease gnawing at them. The highway lay empty in both directions. Not a single set of headlights, not even the distant hum of an engine. Just them, the broken car, and the vast stretch of desert that felt older than time itself. Rachel rubbed her arms. "Feels like someone's watching." Eli forced a laugh, though his hairs on his neck stood up too. "Yeah, well, if they are, maybe they'll give us a ride." But when help finally came, it wasn't what any of them had expected. Rachel was the first to spot him, a dark shape moving slowly along the edge of the highway, far in the distance. "At this hour," she whispered. The figure grew clearer under the headlights. A tall man, clothes hanging loosely off his frame. He wore a long coat, though the desert night didn't call for it. His steps were steady, deliberate, as though he had been walking forever and could walk forevermore. Tom frowned. "No way, we're not picking him up." Eli hesitated, glancing at the temperature gauge. The car wasn't going anywhere soon. The desert stretched empty in all directions. If the man had water, a phone, anything, they might need it. As the man came closer, the beam of light revealed more. His face was gaunt, cheekbones sharp, skin pale as if drained of color. His eyes caught the light strangely, reflecting it back like glass. Eli lowered the window as the man slowed near the car. "Hey, you need a ride?" The man tilted his head slightly, lips curling into something that was almost, but not quite, a smile. He didn't answer, just opened the back door and slid in beside Rachel, moving with a stiff, unnatural grace. The air inside the car felt colder instantly, their breaths fogging faintly against the windows. Rachel shifted uncomfortably, pressing against the door. Eli cleared his throat. "So, where are you headed?" The man finally spoke, his voice dry and low, scraping like gravel. "Same place as you." The car rolled back onto the highway, its engine straining but moving. The desert swallowed them again, headlights carving a narrow tunnel through the dark. The hitchhiker sat silently in the back, his hands folded neatly in his lap. Rachel kept her eyes fixed forward, refusing to look at him. Tom shifted uncomfortably in the passenger seat, stealing glances into the rearview mirror. "So," Eli tried again, voice too loud in the silence. "You live out here?" The man's gaze flicked toward him. "For a long time," he said. His words clipped, almost rehearsed. Rachel shivered. His voice was wrong, too flat, too steady. Tom forced a laugh. "What's that mean? Like, born and raised?" The man's pale lips curved into that same not quite smile. "Longer." The air inside the car grew colder. Eli rubbed the fog off the windshield with his sleeve. He swore the temperature gauge had dropped back to normal, but the chill only deepened. Then the hitchhiker spoke again, eyes still fixed forward. Rachel doesn't like the cold. Her stomach dropped. She hadn't told him her name. None of them had. Rachel's breath hitched. How do you... The man didn't answer. His glassy eyes gleamed faintly in the dark, reflecting the headlights. Eli tightened his grip on the wheel, pulse quickening. Tom leaned closer, whispering, "We need to get rid of him." But before they could decide how, the hitchhiker leaned forward slightly, his dry voice cutting through the silence. "Stop! Ahead!" Eli's eyes flicked to the road ahead. At first he saw nothing but the endless stretch of highway and desert. Then, through the shifting haze of heat and rain-speckled dust, an outline emerged, a gas station. It sat hunched against the landscape, roof sagging, windows boarded up. The rusted sign out front swung weakly in the wind, its letters long since faded. Yet faint light glowed behind the cracks of the boards, a sickly yellow pulse. "No way," Tom whispered. "That place is dead." "Stop," the hitchhikers said again, sharper now. His voice carried an edge that hadn't been there before. Eli hesitated, slowing the car despite himself. Something about the tone left little choice, like the man wasn't asking. Rachel's nails dug into the seat. "Don't, Eli, just keep driving." But the hitchhiker leaned closer between the seats, his breath cold against Eli's neck. "Here," he repeated. Eli's pulse hammered. He steered reluctantly onto the gravel lot. The headlights swept across cracked pavement, weeds pushing through, the rusted skeleton of a fuel pump. The car shuddered to a stop. Silence pressed in again, broken only by the ticking of the cooling engine. The hitchhiker's head turned slowly toward the gas station, eyes gleaming in the glow. That almost smile stretched wider, too wide for comfort. "This is where you get out," he murmured. None of them moved. The three friends sat frozen, the hiss of the desert wind pressing against the car. The hitchhiker didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at the boarded windows of the gas station, where the faint yellow light still pulsed. Finally, Tom muttered, "Screw this," and shoved his door open. Gravel crunched under his shoes as he stepped out, pulling his jacket tighter against the chill. Rachel reluctantly followed, her eyes darting between the gas station and the silent figure still in the back seat. The station looked worse up close, wood warped, glass behind it cracked and dirty. Yet something glowed within, steady as a lantern. Tom cupped his hands against the gap in the boards and peered inside. His breath caught. "Rachel, come here." She joined him, leaning in to see. The walls inside were covered. Dozens of photographs, some black and white, some faded color, all pinned in crooked rows. Travelers, families, hitchhikers, couples, posed in happier times. Rachel's blood ran cold when her gaze landed on the newest photos. 3 of them. Eli, Tom, herself. Her hand flew to her mouth. She staggered back, heart hammering. "No, no, no, no!" Tom spun, eyes wide. "Eli, start the car, now!" Behind them, the hitchhiker was no longer sitting in the back seat. He stood at the edge of the lot, pale face turned toward them, lips stretched into that too wide smile. The yellow light behind the boards flickered like it was alive. Eli's hands fumbled with the keys, heart pounding as Rachel and Tom bolted back toward the car. Gravel scattered under their shoes, the night colder now, the stars above swallowed by a creeping haze. "Go, go, go!" Tom shouted, slamming the door behind him. Eli twisted the ignition. The engine roared to life instantly, smooth, strong, as if it had never overheated at all. The sudden surge of power made his stomach turn. Rachel clutched the door handle, eyes wide. "He's gone! Where is he?" Eli didn't answer. He threw the car into gear and peeled out of the lot, tires spitting dust. The headlights caught the boarded station one last time as they veered back onto the highway. For a brief second, the yellow glow inside brightened, spilling through the cracks like fire. Rachel dared a glance at the rear view mirror. Her chest tightened. The hitchhiker stood at the edge of the lot, perfectly still, perfectly straight. The shadows bent around him, his outline sharp against the glowing station behind. His face was pale, his grin stretched unnaturally, and his glassy eyes reflected the headlights as though watching them vanish into the night. Then the light from the gas station blinked out, plunging the desert back into darkness. Tom swore under his breath. Rachel pressed her shaking hands to her face. Eli just kept driving, eyes locked on the road ahead, praying the highway would finally take them somewhere real. But none of them spoke the truth out loud. The man hadn't needed a ride. He had been waiting for them.
The mountain road wound sharply upward, each curve hugging steep cliffs that dropped into blackness. Anna gripped the armrest, her knuckles pale, while Luke leaned forward over the wheel, headlights cutting through the swirling fog. "What time is it?" Anna asked, her voice hushed. Luke checked his phone. No signal. The screen glowed 1:47 a.m. They had left their college town hours ago, planning to cut through the mountains to save time. But the shortcut had stretched endlessly, the road narrowing, guardrails missing in long stretches. The fog thickened as if drawn to them, swallowing the world beyond the glass. "Feels like we're the last people alive," Anna muttered, peering at the empty road. Luke tried to laugh, but it came out tight. "We'll hit the highway soon. Just one more pass." The car climbed steadily, tires humming against cracked asphalt. No other headlights appeared, no distant glow of towns below, just fog pressing close, muffling the night. A chill seeped into the car, though the heater was on full. Anna rubbed her arms uneasy. Something about the silence outside felt wrong, too heavy, too complete. Then, through the haze, the road straightened. Ahead loomed a black opening carved into the mountain. A tunnel. The tunnel rose out of the fog like the mouth of some vast creature, arched stone, blackened with age. No lights lined its ceiling, no signs marked its entrance, just a yawning hole in the mountain, swallowing the last of the road. Luke slowed, unease written plain across his face. Looks old, real old. Anna's stomach tightened. Can we turn back? He glanced at the cliff, hugging the shoulder. No space to U-turn, no safe pull-off. The fog behind was just as dense as what lay ahead. He pressed the gas gently. We'll get through quick. The car's headlights stretched weakly against the tunnel walls, revealing stone slick with moisture. Water dripped steadily from overhead, splattering onto the hood with dull taps. Their tires echoed on the pavement, the sound magnified by the hollow passage. Anna leaned toward the glass. Dark streaks marred the stone, long gouges that looked carved by something sharp. Some curved like claw marks, others jagged lines that crisscrossed wildly. She swallowed. Luke, these look like... Don't say it. His voice was low, clipped. The fog followed them inside, rolling along the floor, glowing faintly under the beams. The deeper they drove, the darker it seemed, the headlights barely cutting through the gloom. And still, the tunnel stretched on, longer than it should have been. Halfway through, the engine sputtered. Luke cursed, tapping the gas, but the car coughed once, twice, then died. Headlights flickered out, plunging them into total darkness. The silence was crushing. Then came the drip of water, echoing like a slow clock. Each drop seemed louder than the last. Anna's breathing quickened. "Start it again." "I'm trying," Luke muttered, twisting the key. Nothing, just a hollow click. Their own reflections stared faintly back from the glass, pale and distorted. Then Anna froze. In the rearview mirror, a shape shifted behind them, tall, thin, moving against the fog. "Luke," she whispered, "someone's back there." He turned, but saw only thick mist pooling against the rear window. "It's the fog," he insisted, though his voice cracked. A sound broke the air, not dripping this time, something softer, a shuffle, footsteps echoing faintly against stone. Anna grabbed his arm. "You hear that?" Luke didn't answer. His hand trembled as he twisted the key again. The car stayed dead. Then, from somewhere deep in the tunnel, came a faint sound, a voice, low, distorted by echoes, too far away to make out words. But it was coming closer. The voice faded into whispers, multiplying, curling through the tunnel like threads of smoke. Anna pressed back into her seat, her breath shallow. Then, tap. She jerked her head toward the sound.
Something had brushed the glass. Another tap followed on the opposite side, deliberate, like fingertips trailing slowly along the windows.
Luke's eyes darted around, hands frozen on the wheel. "It's nothing," he muttered, though his voice betrayed him. The fog thickened, crawling higher across the car, pale tendrils pressing against the windows. Shapes flickered within it, too vague to define, but too solid to ignore. Shadows began circling the car, slipping through the mist. Tall figures with limbs too long, movements too smooth. Their outlines dragged along the glass, blotting out what little light remained. Anna clutched Luke's sleeve. "They're watching us." One shadow leaned close to her window. For a heartbeat, she saw its face through the fog, featureless except for hollow eyes glowing faintly white. She screamed, scrambling back. The whispers swelled, overlapping into something almost like laughter, bouncing endlessly off the stone walls. Luke slammed his hand against the key again, desperate. The car groaned but stayed silent, trapped in the dark, and the shadows pressed closer. The key turned once more, and this time the engine roared to life. Headlights blazed, cutting through the tunnel.
Anna gasped. Every window was smeared with handprints, dozens of them, some small, some impossibly large, pressed into the glass as if clawing to get inside. The shadows recoiled, shrinking back into the fog. Their hollow eyes glowed one last time before dissolving into mist. The whispers cut off in unison, leaving only the echo of the engine. "Go!" Anna cried. Luke slammed the gas. The car shot forward, tires screeching against wet stone. The headlights carved a desperate path through the tunnel, walls blurring past in streaks of black and gray. The fog swirled angrily in their wake, chasing, but never catching. Then, suddenly, they burst into the open night. The fog vanished behind them as if cut by an invisible blade. Cool mountain air rushed in through the vents, and stars glittered sharp above. Anna twisted in her seat, relief flooding her chest, only to choke on it. The tunnel was gone. Where its mouth had been, the mountain face was solid stone, unbroken. Luke kept driving, his hands white on the wheel, eyes locked ahead. Neither spoke, because deep down, they both knew the truth. The mountain hadn't let them through. It had let them out. For now.
Daniel rubbed his eyes, the highway lines blurring under the headlights. Hours of driving had turned the road into a hypnotic rhythm, and the desert night stretched endlessly in every direction. Beside him, Mia shifted in her seat, exhaustion heavy in her voice. "Dan, we need to stop. You're going to fall asleep at the wheel." He nodded, fighting a yawn. "Yeah, just nowhere to pull over." As if on cue, a sign appeared out of the darkness. Faded paint, letters cracked but still legible. Motel, vacancy. An arrow pointed toward a narrow side road. Mia exhaled in relief. Finally. They followed the arrow, The road curved sharply, leading to a low building crouched at the edge of the desert. The neon vacancy sign buzzed faintly, half its bulbs burnt out, casting a sickly green glow across the cracked parking lot. The place looked like it hadn't been touched in decades, roof sagging, paint peeling, weeds curling through the asphalt. Only one other car sat in the lot, coated in dust as if abandoned. Daniel killed the engine. The silence outside was immediate, broken only by the distant hum of the neon sign. "Creepy," Mia whispered, hugging her jacket tighter. Daniel forced a smile masking his unease. Hey, a bed's a bed. But as they stepped out into the night, both felt the same thing. The motel hadn't been waiting for guests. It had been waiting for them.
The lobby smelled faintly of mildew and old smoke, the kind that clung to walls for decades. A cracked bell sat on the counter, tarnished from disuse. The faded wallpaper peeled in long strips, and a dusty couch sagged under its own weight in the corner. Daniel tapped the bell. The sharp ding echoed too loudly in the empty space. A door creaked open behind the desk, and the receptionist shuffled out. He was thin, almost skeletal, with skin pale and waxy under the flickering overhead light. His eyes were deep-set, shadowed, yet they never quite blinked. Checking in, his voice was flat, hollow, like someone reciting lines by memory. Daniel cleared his throat. Yeah, just one night?" The man slid an old, heavy key across the counter, real metal, attached to a cracked wooden tag with the number 6 etched into it. His fingers lingered on the key longer than necessary before letting go. "Stay in your room after midnight," he said softly. Mia stiffened. "Excuse me?" The man's eyes flicked up at her, unblinking. His lips twitched into something that might have been a smile. "The halls are noisy." Daniel forced a laugh, uneasy. "Got it. Thanks." The man didn't respond. He simply turned and shuffled back through the door, leaving the lobby in heavy silence once again. Room 6 sat at the far end of the hall, its door swollen from years of humidity. Daniel forced the key into the lock, the metal grinding before it finally turned. The room smelled stale, a mix of damp carpet and cleaning chemicals that hadn't masked whatever had seeped into the walls. The wallpaper was faded yellow, curling at the seams. The lamp on the nightstand flickered weakly, casting more shadow than light. Mia dropped her bag on the bed and crossed her arms. "Dan, this place is disgusting!" "Yeah, well, it's either this or sleep in the car." He tried to sound light, but his eyes kept drifting to the stains blotching the carpet. Dark, uneven, too large to ignore. They tried to settle in. Daniel flipped through static-filled channels on the TV until he shut it off, the screen glowing faintly before fading. Mia brushed her teeth in the cracked bathroom sink, the mirror clouded with age. Then the noises started. At first, just a faint creak, like footsteps pacing the hall. Slow, heavy. Then a whisper, low and muffled, slipping through the thin walls. Daniel opened the door, heart pounding. The hall was empty, washed in weak yellow light, yet shadows clung unnaturally at the corners, shifting as though something had just moved out of sight. He closed the door quickly, locking it this time. Mia's face was pale. "He told us not to go out after midnight." The clock on the nightstand ticked past midnight. The noises grew louder, footsteps dragging outside their door, stopping, then starting again. Whispers wove through the cracks of the walls, layered voices too soft to understand, but too many to dismiss. Then the doorknob began to turn. It moved slowly, rattling against the lock, as if someone was testing it with deliberate patience. Daniel froze, staring. Mia clapped a hand over her mouth, stifling a scream. The knob turned harder, the lock groaning under the pressure. A shadow pooled under the doorframe, stretching long fingers of black across the carpet. "Dad," Mia whispered, trembling. "Someone's out there." He shook his head, backing away. Don't make a sound." The knob stilled. Silence fell. Mia dared a glance toward the window and gasped. Faces pressed against the thin curtains from outside, pale, gray, distorted. Eyes too wide, mouths stretching into silent screams. The fabric bulged inward where invisible hands pushed against the glass. Daniel grabbed her arm, pulling her from the window. "We're leaving, now!" The whispers rose again, swirling into laughter that made the walls vibrate. The knob gave one final rattle, then stopped. But both of them knew whatever waited in the hall hadn't left. It was still there, waiting. Daniel yanked their bags off the bed, his hands shaking. "We're not staying another second." Mia didn't argue. She clutched his arm as he unlocked the door. The hallway stretched empty, the flickering bulbs buzzing faintly, but the air felt charged, like dozens of unseen eyes followed every step. They hurried down the corridor. The walls seemed longer than before, the doors all closed, numbers crooked in their frames. The lobby finally appeared ahead. Dimly lit, the receptionist's desk sat abandoned. The chair was empty, dust coating the counter as if no one had touched it in years. The bell that had rung so sharply before was now tarnished and silent. The metal cracked down the middle. Mia's breathing quickened. "Dan, this isn't right. Just keep moving." They pushed through the lobby doors into the night. The neon vacancy sign still buzzed faintly, but the letters flickered out one by one as they ran across the lot. Daniel fumbled with the keys, and the car roared to life on the first turn. Gravel sprayed as he sped out, headlights sweeping across the building one last time. Mia twisted in her seat, eyes wide. The motel was gone. No building, no sign, no lot. Just an empty stretch of desert. Her throat tightened. "Dan, where were we?" Neither of them had an answer.
The forest pressed close on either side of the narrow road, trees arching overhead like ribs of some colossal beast. Chris kept his eyes fixed on the headlight's reach, the yellow beams slicing through darkness that seemed heavier than night should be. Matt leaned against the window, yawning. "Man, we should have stopped in town. This shortcut feels like a bad idea." Chris started to answer, but the car jolted. A harsh sputter rattled the hood, then silence. The dashboard lights flickered once and went out. He coasted to the shoulder, gravel crunching beneath the tires until the car stopped, dead. Chris twisted the key. Nothing. Not even a click. Matt groaned. "You've got to be kidding me!" They sat in the silence. At first, Chris thought it was peaceful, the kind of deep quiet you only find in places untouched by traffic. But the longer it stretched, the more wrong it felt. No chirping insects, no rustle of leaves, not even the distant call of an owl. The forest was utterly still, as if holding its breath. Chris swallowed. "Try your phone." Matt pulled it out, tapped the screen. "No bars. You?" Chris checked his own. Same thing. Dead zone. They exchanged a glance. Neither said what both were thinking. It felt like the road itself had swallowed them. Matt forced a laugh. "Well, guess we start walking." But as they stepped into the night, both felt the same prickling sense. Something unseen was already watching. Branches cracked underfoot as they followed the road, their breath misting in the chill. The forest loomed, thick trunks twisting upward, blotting out the moon. Chris kept glancing back at the motionless car, its silhouette quickly swallowed by trees. After 15 minutes of walking, Matt stopped. There. Through the pines, a dim glow flickered. Lantern light. They pushed through the underbrush until the shape of a cabin emerged. The wood siding was warped and gray, the roof sagging as though one storm away from collapse. Windows were boarded, some slats rotted through, yet from inside, faint golden light pulsed, steady as a heartbeat. Matt grinned nervously. At least someone's home. Chris frowned. Place looks abandoned. Maybe squatter's firelight, not a lantern. Still better than freezing on the road, Matt said, stepping closer. The cabin loomed larger, its porch slanted, boards creaking with every step. A rusted lantern swung by the door, though it wasn't lit. The glow came from within, slipping through the cracks of the wood. They stopped at the door. Neither moved. Chris finally muttered, "This is stupid. We should go back to the car." Before Matt could reply, something shifted inside. A shadow crossed the slats of the boarded window, and then footsteps, slow, deliberate, moving toward the door. The knob rattled once, then turned. The door creaked open, and a man filled the frame. His figure was tall but slightly hunched, shoulders bony under a threadbare flannel. His hair hung in damp strands, and his eyes caught the lantern glow in a way that made them gleam too brightly. "Well now," he said, voice dry as splintered wood. "Travelers." Chris hesitated. "Car broke down. We thought maybe—" "Come in." The man caught him off, stepping aside. "Shouldn't be out here after dark." Matt exchanged a glance with Chris, then stepped forward. Reluctantly, Chris followed. Inside, the cabin smelled of smoke and damp earth. A single lantern burned on the table, its flame too steady, almost unnatural. The walls were lined with shelves of jars filled with dark, unidentifiable things.
A pot simmered on a wood stove, though no fire crackled beneath it. The man gestured to 2 chairs by the table. "Sit, eat something. You'll need strength." Matt muttered, "Thanks, but we're not." "Sit," the man repeated, firmer. They obeyed. He ladled thick stew into cracked bowls, sliding them across the table. The smell was sour, metallic. Chris's stomach turned. The man's grin stretched too wide. "Storm's coming," he said softly. "Best you stay put." Chris frowned. What storm? Sky was clear. The man's gleaming eyes flicked toward the boarded windows. "Not the kind you see." The words sank like ice into the room. Chris pushed the bowl away, appetite gone. He scanned the room, unease tightening in his chest. That's when he noticed the walls, scratches, dozens of them carved deep into the wood, running in jagged patterns. Some looked like fingernails dragged in desperation, others like claws. Words overlapped between gouges, scrawled in frantic hands. "Don't stay. Midnight. Run." Matt had wandered to a shelf, picking up a tattered notebook. Pages inside were filled with messy writing, ink smudged and frantic. The entries began ordinary, weather notes, supply lists, but grew darker, obsessive. They circle at night. They whisper through the trees. Don't trust him. He feeds them. Matt's throat went dry. He snapped the book shut. Behind them, the man's voice cut through the silence. "You shouldn't read things that don't belong to you." They turned. He stood in the center of the room, lantern glow sharpening the hollows of his face. His grin was gone now, replaced by something harder, eyes gleaming with anger. Chris forced a steady tone. "We didn't mean—" "People come here," the man interrupted, his voice rising. "They never listen. They always peek where they shouldn't. And then—" his gaze drifted toward the windows. "Then it's too late." The wind outside howled suddenly, rattling the boards. The lantern flame shivered, though no draft touched it. Matt whispered, "Chris, we need to leave." But the man only smiled again, slow and deliberate. "No, you need to stay." The man slid the heavy bolt across the cabin door with a metallic clack. The sound echoed like a final verdict. "It's almost time," he murmured, his back to them. "Best to keep quiet when they come." Chris's chest tightened. "Who?" The man didn't answer. Instead, he blew out the lantern. Darkness swallowed the room, thick and suffocating. Only faint moonlight leaked through gaps in the boards, striping the floor in silver. Then came the sound, footsteps outside. Not one set, but many. Dozens, maybe more, moving in a slow, deliberate circle around the cabin. Matt pressed against the wall, whispering, "This isn't real. This can't be real." The whispers began next, low, hissing voices, seeping through the wood, overlapping like a chorus. Chris strained to catch words, but could only hear fragments. "Come out. Hungry. Join us." Shadows passed across the cracks,
tall figures slipping silently between the trees. One stopped at the window, a pale face pressed against the boards, eyes wide, mouth slack, skin gray and stretched. Mia shuddered. Chris grabbed Matt's arm. "We have to get out." The man turned toward them, his teeth catching the moonlight. "There's nowhere to go." The whispers swelled, rattling the glass jars on the shelves, shaking the floorboards. The air grew colder, breath fogging. And then, with perfect unity, every voice outside whispered the same word, low, guttural, hungry. Now. The bolt rattled as the door shuddered under unseen hands. Wood groaned, nails squealing against the frame. The man just stood there, smiling in the dark. Chris didn't wait. He lunged, grabbing Matt's arm, and together they slammed into the back door. The rotted wood gave way, splinters exploding outward. Cold night air rushed in as they tumbled onto the forest floor. "Run!" Chris shouted. They tore through the trees, branches whipping their faces, roots clawing at their ankles. Behind them, the cabin pulsed with an eerie glow, shadows spilling from its windows like smoke. Voices chased them, rising and falling in unnatural rhythm. Too close, too many. Matt gasped. "Which way?" "Just move!" Chris yelled. The forest seemed endless, trees closing in, paths twisting. But then, headlights. A pale glow through the trees. They burst into the clearing. Their car sat exactly where they'd left it, engine running, headlights beaming across the empty road. The hood no longer smoked. The gauges glowed steady. They dove inside. Chris slammed the door, shoved the gear shift, and the car leapt forward. Gravel sprayed as they sped down the road, not daring to look back. But Matt did. His voice broke. "Chris, he's there!" On the roadside, lantern in hand, stood the man from the cabin. His grin was wide, eyes gleaming in the artificial light. The forest swallowed him as they sped past. But Chris knew the truth. He hadn't been left behind. He'd been let go.